DeafRowe, and I'm back again with another review. And this week, I got something special that you guys have probably never heard of, or at least most of you guys, of y'all, have never heard of. And it's a movie that was actually filmed in Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama, of all places. And it is called The Traveling Executioner, 1970, starring Stacy Keach as the main character. Now, they tell you in the movie it takes place in 1918, and he's a traveling executioner that is going around the bayou with a portable electric chair in the back of his big truck. And the whole point of this is he is a ex carny from a circus who decides to go freelance and just take this electrical chair around to different prisons, and for $100 a head he electrocutes them through the electric chair manner of death for the prisons. Now, as you can see here, this, I don't know where exactly you can stream this movie. I have the DVD, which is what you can kind of see here, and it's crazy. It starts off. I mean, this is just a crazy movie altogether, but it's almost like um, a reverse of Homer's journey. You know what I mean? It's everything's backwards. Uh, Basically, you start off, you see this woman right here, and she is being executed, or supposed to be executed, but she keeps getting a stay of execution every time it gets close. But, yeah, that's just the beginning. Before I continue, though, please remember to hit that like and subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when I'm going to post a new video out on DeafRowe TV. As you can see now, I'm going to start posting these videos out here because certain things happen that keeps me from doing this on my other video place. So from now on, we're going to be doing it on DeafRowe TV. All reviews all the time. Now, without further ado, The Traveling Executioner, starring Stacy Keach. Now, this is 1970, so he's fairly young. As you can see here, the woman is played, the character Gundred is played by Mariana Hill. We have a Jimmy played by Bud Cort. Doc Priddle played by Graham Jarvis. We have a Piquant, which you will see, he's the guy, he's one of the, the security guys right here that just wants to kill this lady. You got Emmett Walsh playing the Warden Brodsky. And then see Sam Reese playing the priest as Sammy Reese. So he's the priest that you see walking around in this movie. So let's get started. She shows up at the prison, which in this movie is called... There you can see there. It's Emmett Walsh playing the Warden Brodsky right there. Fairly young at this time, 1970. And then there's Piquant, the head of security. Let's see if I can get further back and show you the prison itself. There we go. And in this movie, it's called the Fairweather Prison, which is not really what it's called. This prison is actually called the Kilby Prison in Montgomery. Now, whether the shots were set up for this, just because of it. But just to give you a little background before we get going into this review, so you know a little bit of the history about where this was filmed. Kilby Prison was off of Coliseum Boulevard in Montgomery. I mean, that is almost downtown Montgomery, so they did not want that prison that close to downtown anymore. And this prison was scheduled to be demolished. Well, one of the agreements was they would let this movie be filmed at this prison if that because towards the end they were planning a big explosion, and what the in their infinite wisdom they said, well, we'll let you film here if the explosion's big enough to take down everything. Like they want it leveled, pretty much. Uh, and so that's kind of what the agreement was. I mean, and from what I recall, and talking to some people about this movie that were actually alive when this was being filmed, it was a big event for Montgomery. People actually gathered around near and around where the prison was and wanted to see the fireworks display, basically. And when the explosions went off, they went off fairly well, but the problem was the walls were so thick in this prison that it did not come crumbling down like they thought it would. And so they actually tried 3 charges on this building, and it still was not able to come down. And the remnants of the building itself stayed around for years and years afterwards. So, I mean, at least they gave it 3 tries. They didn't just, one and done and say, okay, it doesn't come down or whatever. But yeah, just an interesting tidbit about where this was filmed. This prison that is an actual prison where they filmed. It was an old prison that was scheduled to be demolished. So it's kind of cool tidbit of information right there before I get started on this review. And like I said, we come back and because she's not going to be put on death row because she's got to stay, they decide to put her in the maximum security ward of the prison, which means she has to go through the normal ward to get to the maximum security. And of course, all the dudes are like, yeah, this woman's coming through. And at this time in 1918, I'm guessing there wasn't a lot of women prisons around, so this was like the only option for somebody that committed such a crime as murder of some sort. They would just take the woman to the men's prison, lock them up in a separate area, and just let them wait it out until they were to be executed, or the motion was stayed and they were went back to somewhat of a normal life. I'm not quite sure what they would have all done. They would have probably transported her to an actual women's prison that was fairly far away, because obviously there wasn't enough of them back then. And they put her in the maximum security, like you see here. And then you enter Mr. Keach himself, Keach, whatever you want to call him. And his character is named Jonas Candid in this movie. He approaches her as the traveling executioner, but he doesn't tell her that at first. He just goes, I promise you it will be swift, clean, and you won't feel a thing or whatever. She's like, well, how do you know? It's like, well, because I'm the executioner. he's basically, he comes in there trying to swoon her with flowers and stuff, and just basically tells him, well, it's my job. I'm not happy about having to execute you, but I have to do it. It is my job. It pays fairly well. I get $100 for every person that sits in my chair, pretty much. And so she's like freaking out. She freaks out, like fights with him a little bit. What the hell are you doing? Why are you even here? And all this other stuff. So then we cut to him driving up to the prison in his truck, which has this big box on the back. It looks like an old carny truck, obviously, because he was an ex-carny. And he has the whole setup inside in this box: the generator, the chair, the switches, everything's inside this box, pretty much. And of course, he's the traveling executioner. Why wouldn't you? So yeah, he gets there and he's having to execute a man that day, and so he thought he was coming to execute the woman, but because at that time the woman has a stay of execution, so he's not there to execute her. He's only there to execute the man that he came to execute. And of course, and this is the oddest thing to me about this movie. I know, 1970, like these people are just, this is like a show to them. Like, what the hell? And so yeah, you got all these press people and stuff just lined up outside this window watching this execution take place. Anyway, the priest brings them in and everything, And you can tell the guy's like really nervous. He's not wanting to, sit down and do what he's supposed to do. Obviously, nobody's going to willingly sit down and have somebody execute him. So Jonas starts, giving them this whole story about the fields of Ambrosia, the Greek mythology that Homer, Plato, and the rest of them, talk about. And he's giving him the whole spiel. Basically, he's trying to put a nice image in his head while he's strapping him down to this chair for his death. And he actually does a fairly good job at calming him down, putting him in the chair, strapping him down, all while telling him this elaborate story about where he might could go when he dies, the fields of Ambrosia or whatever. So that was the whole ordeal behind that. And he's basically trying to talk him into death. It's strange. I mean, you see the carny side come out of him in this part, or the con side come out. He's like giving this guy some type of hope of an afterlife where he will see something very beautiful after. And he's basically talking about the fields of Ambrosia, where everything doesn't matter what you did before, everything's fine there, and all this stuff. And he gets him strapped in, and of course, by the end of it, you can see he's almost smiling, like he's ready to go. It's crazy. I mean, he basically talked it up, like he talked death up to him, for him, or whatever. Anyway. So he goes out. So hold on, let's go back a little bit. So yeah, he goes out to the van and has like this little generator out there, and he pulls the switch, and he's dead. Well, when he get him into the morgue or whatever, the doctor's looking him over or whatever, and his fingers like twitching and stuff, like he's still somewhat of alive. And so they go get the executioner real quick, and he's like, "What are you talking about? He's still alive," and all this stuff. And then, so they try to get him back to the chair, put him back in the chair, and try to pull the switch on him again. But by the time they get him back to the chair, everything, he is completely dead, no doubt about it. He checks him again. He's like, "No, you don't need to execute him again. It just took a while." And so the warden comes to talk to Jonas. He's like, "Jonas, don't worry about that. It does, he has this very suave way of talking to Jonas about, like, man, you've been doing this 8 years, and that's the first time that this ever happened, or whatever." And Jonas ends up blaming the doctor for what happened, because the doctor gave him the wrong weight, supposedly, and Jonas didn't up the amperage enough for the weight that he was supposed to execute or whatever. So he's kind of mad at the doctor about that. The next day, he wakes up in another town. He's basically getting all his stuff together. He's got his $100 from killing that man, and he decides to have his has his truck spruced up so he looks better, like a proper business. Jonas Candid, Esquire, Executioner. So now you see it. Get that $100 is gonna spruce up the van. So yeah, that's his business. Anyway, so finally we come back to the woman, right? And the woman's pretty much pleading with him to find a way to slow down the execution so she can get another stay or whatever, until she can get another stay and all this other stuff. And he's starting to fall for her, and they're trying to scheme about a way to get her out of this, basically. And he's kind of falling for her when he obviously shouldn't. Anyway, so while he's back in his van, old Jimmy comes up talking to, well, not Jimmy, this is the lawyer, John Bottoms. The lawyer comes up to him and talks to him, about, what's he going to do to slow it down. Well, what happened, as you can see there, they're pretty much in it, because what Jonas does, he uses a little bit of money here and there to pay the guards off to look the other way, so he can have his way with her, and do what he wants. Anyway, next morning, one of the guards finds him strapped down to his truck or whatever. Let's see right after this. I'm gonna see if I can get to it real quick. And the guard comes out the next day. Let's see if I and finds him strapped to the wheel of his van or whatever somehow. Of course, he probably did it to himself, or he paid somebody to do this to him. And he acts like somebody stole his electric chair. And this is his first scheme to slow down the process of getting her executed or whatever. And the lawyer meets up with him in his van or whatever, and he's like, "Hey, I know you're up to something. Don't tell me." He's like, "You can let me in on it. You can trust me or whatever." And he's not letting the lawyer know anything or whatever. But the lawyer ekes out just enough information to figure out where he hid the chair. And you find out pretty quick where. So yeah, he goes back and talks to her like, "Hey, I lost my chair, so at least we got a couple of days here. We can, maybe work something out here or whatever." And of course, he has a little fun with her. Comes out of the prison, pay the guards off. Basically, he's falling for this woman when he shouldn't, and he's getting deeper and deeper in doo doo. Anyway, he sees the lawyer. Hello. Yeah, he sees the lawyer come out of the prison church and jump in his car right here and ride off or whatever. And Jonas, he sees him and he's like, "Oh shit," because that's where he hid his chair. Was in the church. It's like nobody goes in there. So he finds his chair is all broken up and everything inside the church, and he's pissed off because he didn't want his chair broken up. He hid the chair, but the lawyer went so far as to break up the chair so the girl could not be executed, even if they find the chair. So as you can see, the warden, Piquant, and the doctor right here behind him in the pew are all pondering like, how'd you know it was here? As I heard a rumor, and he came out here, real quick to try to find it. And of course, it's all broken up into tiny bits. So he ends up meeting up with Jimmy here, played by Bud Cort, and Jimmy is the Undertaker. And he asked Jimmy, he's like, "Do you know anywhere I could get my chair fixed?" And Jimmy pretty much, does know a place, and it's this guy here in town, played by Charles Tenner, a character named Virgil. He's like, "Yeah, I can fix that," and the chair ends up bringing like a whole crowd to the side of it or whatever, and the crowd starts to gather around the electric chair because it's weird or whatever. And to thank Jimmy for helping him out with finding somebody to fix the chair, Jonas decides to give him a little money to go have some fun with the ladies that night or whatever. But it doesn't go according to plan, obviously, because he wasn't interested. Whatever. He's a man that deals with too many dead bodies too much, and he just doesn't have it in him to go after it pretty much. And so Jonas makes a deal with him. It's like, "Look, man, if you don't want to be an Undertaker anymore, I bet you train under me and become the executioner instead." And so he kind of takes him under his wing to learn how to do the execution stuff. And the first thing they do is they go and find the chair where they're fixing it up at, and he shows them how it all works or whatever. The next day he goes to, as you can see, I mean, they're all out on the field or whatever, except for her. She's like in this bird cage, like this ginormous bird cage is what I what it looks like to me is like this woman's in a bird cage in a prison, you know. Anyway, so they're talking, and this is when the Quant sees them, and he figures out that the two have something going on. Because this guy, the head of security, he just wants to hang her and be done with it. He's like, I don't give a shit about the electrocuting her. I'll just go ahead and hang her, be done with it. And now that he sees the executioner has a thing for the woman, for Gundren, that's her name. He thinks something's up, and whatever. Anyway, at this point in the game, he's coming up with another scheme, just in case the chair gets fixed too fast or whatever. And this next scheme involves the doctor. What he's wanting to do is lower the voltage of the current just enough to shock somebody asleep, and then because he got the idea from when he electrocuted that guy at the beginning of the movie, when it wasn't enough voltage to fully kill him, but it finally did kill him in the end because the doctor didn't give him the correct weight. Well, he's testing it out on the rats, and right here, and basically he gets the doctor to give him some type of drug to wake the rats up after he electrocutes them. But the only thing is, he's got to get the doctor on his side on this in order for his plan to work on her. Because what he plans to do is electrocute her, but not so much that it kills her. He gives her the drug afterwards because he's the one that declares the person dead afterwards. And then, so he agrees to like $500 to do it for him. So he's got to figure out a way to get $500. And that's when he decides to bring in a bunch of prostitutes to the prison. And for $4 a pop, the prostitutes will have their way with one prisoner or whatever, so they can get the money up to get the one woman off. It's like, golly, man, the bad deeds are just stacking up. I mean, he's doing everything he can. He's just digging himself a hole throughout this whole movie, trying to get this woman off the hook for this execution or whatever. And it's quite interesting. He just, no matter what he does, the hole just keeps getting deeper and deeper for him. While she's just, waiting it out, sweating it out. Anyway. So yeah, that happens. And of course the prisoners are getting rowdy because they, want to get in there, whatever. Anyway, then the doc comes in. He's like, you got this much money? You could possibly get 1,000. So now the doc is getting greedy. The doctor's getting greedy. He's like, if you can make this much in this short amount of time, you can obviously get me 1,000, then, couldn't you? So now, like I said, every time he tries to get her off the hook for this execution, he just digs himself a deeper hole. So Jonas decides to take the money that he made from the prostitution ring and the prisoners and go gamble to see if he could double his money. And he does. He wins the hand or whatever. He bets he bets everything he has, including the electro chair, to win this game. They show up the next day. He's all high and mighty, like, I got my money finally and everything. My plan's gonna work now. I got the doc. I got the money. I got the doc on my side. Anyway, the gangster guy shows up and beats the shit out of him and takes the money back. And he has no money anymore. So everything he put towards it is gone now. And that's when old, Paquant, played by James Slohan right here, the head of security, he decides, you know what? If the executioner can have his way with this Gundred, I'm going to have my way too. So he decides to make his way in there and try to have his way with her, which doesn't work out very well for him. So he just decides, I'm gonna hang her. You kick me in the nuts, I'm gonna hang you now. I don't give a shit. And Jonas talks him out of it. He's like, "You're doing this without the warden's permission. The warden's gonna be pissed off if you do this, especially that since she could possibly get another stay, and you're going ahead and execute her, whatever. Plus, this is my electrocution. I'm scheduled to do this. You gotta let me do this, whatever." And then, yeah, he's not. So they're trying to find a way. And finally, this is when the shit gets even deeper right here. She finally, of course, they're fisting to get it on again, obviously. And she whispers in his ears, like, you could rob a bank, get your money that way, and then get me out of here, and all this other stuff. And of course, he doesn't want to rob a bank, so he tries to go about it the way a con would go about it. And he goes in there, takes out a loan. He's like, "I want to take out $1,000 loan, and then I'm going to turn around and buy Liberty bonds with it," and all this other stuff, because I'm a patriot and all this other stuff, and because it's 1918, the war's going on and all this. So he's trying to smooth talk all these guys over with patriotism and all this other stuff, and try to get this $1,000 so he can pay the doctor off or whatever. But it doesn't go according to plan. It gets all the way through the paperwork, and the bank owner or whatever this guy is, he calls up one of his references or whatever that he has in the book, because the bank guy, he's like, "Hey, I need something to use as collateral," and he pulls out his book of names, and his book of names of all the people that are fixing to be executed on his schedule to be executed. He said, "Each one of those people, that's $100. I got $1,600 in this little notebook. I could easily pay this loan off in a month. All these people are scheduled. Now that might be 2 or 3 that are going to be, stayed or whatever, but I still get closer to $1,000 for that loan to be paid off and all this other stuff." So he calls one of his references or whatever. Well, one of the references that he calls just so happens is like, yeah, he's done his time. He's a responsible citizen to this nation now and all this stuff. Well, the banker didn't like that he served time in prison himself, probably because of a con job. He said, "I did my 3 years time in prison. I did my time. I paid my dues and all this other stuff." But the bank guy decides, "I'm not going to give you the money because I'm questioning your character now." And so he's getting frustrated now. So he's losing his temper. And upon losing his temper, he grabs the gun from the security guy at the bank. And like I said, he's digging that hole deeper and deeper. So he grabs the gun, right? And then as soon as he grabs the gun, this happens. Grabs him, shoots him. And of course he's probably dead because, that's... Shoots him, and he tries to escape. He gets to the prison, gets her out of there, has her in the back of the truck or whatever right here, this is nighttime. And he decides to stop in town because he wants to get his damn electric chair. And but as he goes inside to get the electric chair, she jumps into the driver's seat and takes off without him because she don't give a shit about him. She was just using him the whole damn time to get out of there. And of course it worked, so she took off in his truck, and he's left hanging with a damn chair and nothing else. And of course Picant shows up, and he's like, "I knew you'd come here first because you couldn't leave without your chair, and I knew you loved that chair more than anything else." And so here towards the end, you have Jonas and the priest playing a little card game right before his execution, because like I said, he probably killed that guy that was in the bank. The warden's like, "I really don't like to do this. You were such a nice guy," and all this other stuff, but I don't have any choice. The law is the law and all this other nonsense business, whatever. Anyway, so he tells the barber guy to shave my head and shave it clean. I want it done just right, whatever. And of course, they give him the grandstand right here, right, and of course, uh, Jimmy is the one that's going to execute him because that's the one he had been training to become an executioner, so he didn't have to be an undertaker anymore. And Jimmy's all dressed up for him and everything, trying to make it the best one he can. And Jimmy doesn't know the whole Ambrosia story, so he decides to tell this Ambrosia story all over again, just like the beginning of the movie, and towards the end of the movie, he's doing it for himself. So he does the Ambrosia story all over again, as Jimmy is strapping him up and everything. And of course, they get to the end here. Jimmy's like, "I'm sorry," whatever, and then Paquant's like, "Yeah, I can't wait for this." So Jimmy goes out there and throws the switch, but apparently Jimmy had this set up, or it could have been that Jonas had set it up beforehand at the highest setting possible. And like I said, this is so weird. Why you have kids at an execution? This movie's weird. It's just I don't know if this was a historical thing that actually did happen. They took kids to executions. Comment below if that was a real thing. I didn't really look into it that deep because I just thought it was odd. I'm like, why the hell would you take a kid to some shit like this? Anyway, so yeah, he throws the switch, and all of a sudden, everything. Let's see. Let me get to the part right here if I can get it good enough. So yeah, get to the end here. Everything's catching on fire because all the bulbs are busting and everything. There's too much electricity going to the chair, and everything's sparking out of control. Everything's on fire. The building's on fire. Paquant grabs one of the leads coming into the building, and it's electrified, so he's getting electrocuted as well. So Jonas is taking Paquant out with him, and then the entire building explodes. And as you can see, I don't know if this was the first explosion, second explosion, or third explosion they used to try to bring down these buildings. But if you look close to the right of where this fire is, you notice none of those windows are there. They're all broken through. So you can tell this building is abandoned. Even in the shot of this movie, you can tell the building is abandoned, that they exploded. So yeah, I mean this was probably the first explosion, the one they filmed for the movie, and then they had to do it 2 more times, and it still didn't bring down these columns that you see that are not coming down right now either. That's crazy. And then, of course, towards the end, you see Jimmy talking to Gundren because they caught up with her, obviously, and then they're bringing her back to the prison. And Gundren's like, I'd rather fry or whatever. And Jimmy's like, we don't do that anymore. We actually have gas chamber now. I'm moving up in the world and got to move up with the technology. And then yeah, so Jimmy now is the executioner, coming out with a van right here. And he leaves the prison while she's going back in. And it starts all over again. Even though the side of the van, hold on, let's see if I can get a good shot of this. Even though the side of the van has Jimmy's name on it now, I find it odd. It's Jonas Candon, JC, and Jimmy. The character's named Jimmy, but you don't ever know his last name until you get, let's see, towards the end here. Right here. There we go. Jimmy Croft is the name. And even on the IMDb page, it just says Jimmy. It doesn't say Jimmy Croft. So I thought that was kind of cool that they gave him a last name that started with a C, so they didn't have to change the back of the van. where the JC is. Saved a little money in the painting there. We'll call you Jimmy Croft so we can keep this JC on the back doors and not have to change that. Anyway, there's the end of the movie. This is The Traveling Executioner, 1970, and it is me, DeafRowe, out.